It's the end of the week again, and like I said in my previous stream, but I'll reiterate, I took some time with the RPG simulator this week on my own, so I've made progress that wasn't recorded in a stream or off stream or anything like that. Just some time with this project. I'm really enjoying the project. So sometimes I just need to like sink into it and do a mode of work that isn't possible uh, on the stream or in the videos. But I do enjoy having people who can follow along and reflect back to me on the stuff that I'm playing with and tell me what thoughts they're having. So I want to update you a little bit about what I have done in the RPG simulator, and then maybe play around with it some, maybe find some things I can do for this Friday afternoon to have some fun with it and make a little bit more progress uh, on top of where things already are at. So let me just show you what it does now. When I run it, it's still in log mode, so I haven't done anything with changing the main mode. But you can see now it goes through this whole journey system where this party here on a journey, they choose to travel forward. During that time, they get a chance to make some moves. So here, the protect move has been used, and this character is protected. And then an encounter begins with this character who, got 2 hearts and 1 attack. And so a round of combat happens. Looks like the wizard takes a hit, and then the other guy is dead, and then the journey continues. And every time they have an opportunity, they can choose to travel or to camp. And they make that determination based on how much health they have and what time of day it is, which isn't something that I had before. But you can see that there's this thing called hour, and there are 8 hours in this cycle. So when it gets to hour 5, they could decide to rest if somebody's already low on HP, but they don't. They go again. And so when they reach hour 6, they decide to camp for the round. And camping lets them go into the rest state. When they exit the rest state, they got good rest, so they're full HP, moves are restored. So this is the resting part of the system. So now there are multiple encounters. Right before, with this iteration of the simulation, everything we've ever done was just one encounter. Now we have an encounter round, a fight round, and then an exit state for that encounter that then flows back into a larger flow called the journey. And the journey has this like property of advancing the hour every time we go to the next journey round. So time passes in larger chunks at this stage at this layer of the game rules, and it lets you rest, which um, has the property of like giving you a recharge. So you only KO'd characters stay out. Like if somebody falls to 0, they're dead. They can't rest and come back. But characters who are alive come all the way back. Now in my head, there are lots of variations of rest that haven't fully spelled out yet. And this is a little more than what I have in mind. For this circumstance, they shouldn't be getting a full heal. They should be getting +1 heart each. So that these would all be full, but this one would still, one that took 2 hits would still show the mark of having depleted HP. Then you can see after rest, the journey continues. There's also going to be like when you rest, since you're not resting in town, but you're resting on this journey, an encounter is actually possible at this stage. And I want to have the whole idea like a night watch. So you leave a character or 2 or 3 as night watch, and there's a penalty and an upside to having someone as your night watch, and so on, right? And here you can see they're just continuing the journey for quite some time. They rest a couple of times. Eventually, they arrive. The reason it takes so long, the reason it goes on for so long, because I've parameterized it so that they have to take 100 steps forward. So every time they do this travel thing, that's one of the steps. So that's a super long journey. And each one involves the exact same encounter every time, right? Because that's all the journey does right now is spawn this exact thing. So Where that leaves me, in terms of things I could do, is I have a big wide open field. I could try to build more patterns like the journey, or I could try to flesh this one out. I could dive into the rest system and make that more, have a more of the varieties that I want. I could dive into the encounter spawning system and figure out how I want to populate that. I was doing it with a shuffled deck before, and I think that's kind of the effect I want again, that there's a fixed set. You know, if there are 100 steps, that's 100 encounters. Put them together into a deck and shuffle their order. That was sort of what I had in mind. But there are other possibilities. The deck could have, um, it could be more like a spawn table, right, where it's just a probability that it's like a die getting rolled. Previous draws, previous outcomes from the generator don't affect future outcomes as much. And you could imagine blending between the two a lot, actually. Something to explore off camera for another time before I say too. Anyway, I'm not sure which would be fun to do today. There are so many possible directions. Um, Out of curiosity, when they make it, only 2 of them are still alive. So another direction I could take it is to start gathering statistics again. So we can see here they make it 100 steps, no problem. But that's always spawning this guy, right? Now, if I want to, I could start mixing in more complex, more difficult encounters and measuring how many steps they can survive, or how many of them tend to survive to the end of the journey, right? That would be more in the simulation statistical gathering realm, and then I wouldn't just be running for simulation or logging mode. I would also want to put it into statistics mode with multiple. Um, Another thing I could do is to go after stuff like this rest problem. I think there's some interesting stuff here because like I said, I have a few variations of rest that I think could be possible, and which one you get is a system I haven't actually built. That might be big in. Because I think that this will illuminate. I'm not entirely sure that this rest state makes exact sense. And at the same time, I also think that some of the issues that might affect the rest state also affect the journey state, which is in particular that, like, I want to start being able to parameterize these. In fact, I think this will even affect the encounter state once I've got enough. Once I've got an example of a alteration here. The other thing I could be doing though is I could just say, like, look, all this stuff that I want to do, improving the rest system, improving the journey system, improving the encounter system with new variations. A lot of that comes down to actually wanting to be able to have a tile board that is not attached to a character, but that is attached to the context of the machine. What's happening is there are the stack of machines, and whenever a new one gets pushed, it's like a new context begins. It starts doing stuff. I think that something about the way I want to parameterize these might be that I want to set tiles on a tile board for the context. So all the stuff that I can do with tiles already with characters could also be applied to the tile board. Then modifying the rules of something, like which things are allowed or disallowed, is just a matter of having the ability to write tiles that hook in and modify the appropriately. That's kind of the vision here. And so if it's going to be about the tile board, then maybe the right thing to do is to start thinking about that tile board data structure and what remains to get there. And the answer is the main thing that remains to get from where I'm at to the tile boards, I need to work out the condition clause. And I think it's ready to go. I also probably need to do this one. Yeah, state arrays are very much hacked right now. Maybe I could dig into that, although it feels more like kind of having to draw some pictures and organize stuff. It doesn't feel fun. It feels like responsibility. I think condition clauses are fun, although what I do with them now might just be a hack. Honestly, my brain is in like I don't in a mode of just wanting to be able to enjoy all the pieces there. And I think I want to just go with that. I think instead of doing any of these things, what I want to do is just play with adding pieces to the simulation today. Happens. Maybe I want to be able to see statistics now that I can run a journey. Yeah, let's work on feature parity. It's been a long time since I was actually this close to feature parity with the old simulator. Why don't we work on that? So I'm gonna start with going on this journey where you got to do 10 encounters. I want to know the following things. I want to know how many characters survive it and how many days it takes. In order to ask how many survive, I think we have to get out of log mode now. So how do I want to do this? Before, the way I was doing it, I had some 10,000 repetition. Hey there, K-Monk. I'll be happy to tell you. Let me get this to a point where it's running real quick because I'm very close, and I'll show you. Count. We're almost there. We're almost there. Bear with me just a little longer. Okay, so let me turn back on the log mode real quick because that's the only one that actually exists. Okay, so what is an RPG simulator? When I say RPG here, we're talking about like the game genre, specifically a turn-based RPG. In this particular case, but the idea of a game with characters who have stats and battles, classic turn-based RPG elements. You know? Then the simulator part is that there's no player interface to it. It's all like everything is run by a bot brain instead of having one side run by bot brains, the other side run by a human player. It's all bot brains, so I just set it up and then run it and see what happens. And then that way it's a simulation. And then I'm using it as a space in which to put together higher and higher level structuring features for rules like how the RPG journey goes and how an encounter goes and so on and so that's the idea. You can see like here and our guys on a journey. This is the party. Before their first encounter, they get a chance to do something. You can see at the beginning of the encounter, the wizard who has this protect spell has casted it, and this guy has the protect on him. And then they go and both sides decide they're gonna fight. Nobody's running away or anything, and they fight it out. The guy who had the protected actually gets hit, so he loses it. But nobody gets hurt, and then they travel. Nobody has any moves they can use at this stage that they want to use right now. And then another encounter, and it's very simple. Still a lot to do to make it as rich as it can be, but we're getting there, and the structure is now working. And what I'm building today is the ability to run it in this new histogram mode where it will run the simulation many times because there are random variables involved there, right? Like who like initiative, whose attacks land first, and if the enemies happen to attack the same guy or different guys, or if the person you put the protect on happens to be the one you get hit. There's all these different variables that are just random. And so I measure across many runs how likely you are to get hurt, just running the bots, right? At least that's what we're gonna get to. But I had in the first version simulator, and I haven't gotten back to that feature parity with that part of the simulator yet. All right, Shimmer, let's try to here. Let's see. Earlier, I was talking to you about the lack of function over static dispatch or multiple dispatch. C++ has templates, and it does something general. I often have to use Hungarian notational copy and okay, so I think that I remember answering this before, talking about function overloading, polymorphism, and you mean like more like generics. Plus calls them templates. A lot of the other he likes have called them generics, and they have different combinations of properties. I don't know the Julia one. Uh, what I can say is that my main feel on it, because you're talking about the Hungarian notation part, my main feel on it is that there's a space that exists within C that actually exists within all of these languages, where that is not so appealing to do that much. And I actually like that space more than the generic. So what I don't like about templates, similar language features, is that they are in general um, they are a mechanism for generating more code automatically, and I don't like that actually. I like maintaining a certain amount of clarity about how much redundancy I've actually written into the final program, and with something like a template in C++, you can end up stamping out a bunch of copies of the same function, with the only difference being the size of the types are changing from one to the next, and maybe some constructor calls get changed here or there, or destructor calls. And how much of that you want to rely on is a matter of taste, but I want to rely on it very little. Like, I want so little variability from one instance of the next to like a generic data structure. And I end up finding that if I use void pointers and just manage the memory without type safety, quote unquote, at the static level, I actually come up with better ways of optimizing than what I can think of when I am imagining through types and stuff. So I don't use any of that, and I don't miss it. And I don't know what else to add to that. Just Monk asks, is the idea? Ooh, do we have a noise gate problem? I did just set up the noise gate earlier today. So not had any chance to fiddle with it. Let's try both parts. Actually, I think I did lower it, and I must not have like saved the settings properly. Close. Let me open the settings again. And it looks like it saved what I did. Yeah, okay. I also have to make sure to stay close to the mic when I start using the noise gate. I honestly don't need it as bad as I did this morning. My environment was very loud this morning. Maybe I'll just turn it a good amount down now. Okay. I'll do my best not to mess that up too often. How does it sound though? Is it like, are we at the point where it's working reasonably well right now? While I'm waiting for an answer on that, I'll try. Hopefully, it does not get messed up by the noise gate. I'll try to continue answering the question. Uh, is the goal to turn the higher level mechanics into some kind of game eventually? So, on that front, I am, and this program's a little messed up looking right now. It's not supposed to look like this. It's like something's gone wrong with the color, possibly linear sRGB confusion has occurred. So some of the colors here are off and it looks odd. But like, I have this asset viewer that I set up. Oh, look at that. That should be white text, not blue. And there should be a black background. something has gone wrong with the packing of color information or the consistency of the color information or something. Anyway, so I've been working on this for testing out like shader and asset stuff so that I can make a visual interface to it. And I'm not really committing to making a specific game entirely, although the picture of a game is getting clearer and clearer to me. I'm trying to just chase what's right in front of me without getting too far ahead of myself. So I think I can't say for sure because we're still just playing with it, and a big part of the project is more the research that I can spawn along the way, but it feels like I can see how I would make a game out of this. But I don't know how good it would feel to play, right? It's all been built as a simulation, and I think it would feel cool to have like little 3D environments with cute pixel art representing these decisions to a player, and then the simulation part can be used to run more sophisticated logic, like testing out how difficult a particular path is and automating things, having rules that say like if a randomly spawned party can complete this quest before the player gets there, then this happens, right? There's these things that I can imagine building around that will be cool to have available. And so it's very possible that I want to go in that direction, but I'm not sure yet. And it is also a research project. So, like, for instance, with this program, once I've fixed it up a little bit, I'm thinking next week we'll start. Like, this obviously is totally busted. There's supposed to be a label showing up here that's gone for some reason. So once I've figured out what went wrong with it and got it fixed, which I might do before Monday's stream, but I think starting Monday or sometime early next week, I want to hang out on this program and build up some better UI stuff. I think we can use C scripting here in the graphical programming space to make a lot of progress on, I don't know, how to organize graphics code and test out effects and stuff. But I'm still just playing with whatever is immediately available and possible and feeling my way through to what this might be. It might be an RPG game. It might be just a interesting toy to play with that does wacky stuff. It might be a story generator. I don't know. I don't know what it will be. I'm just chasing whatever feels good. Ooh, audio programming language. That sounds cool. I didn't realize you could put something that technical onto Steam. I knew there were like tools, but is it like an environment too? Is it an audio programming language inside of like a custom environment? um, how do I want to do this? I want to be able to decide which one I'm running somewhere. So there we go. I'll just have one called the default that you can control. It doesn't need any parameters. And for some of these, then all we have to do is say RPG sim init default context. And then what we want to be able to do here The hard thing is the context is a fusion of information gathered statically and information about the current simulation. That might need to be separated. Like all this stuff about protos here and the string maps probably need to be separate from the entity system, the pseudo random number generator, the machines, all the stat machine stuff. Like all of this is like variables and machine state and memory management for a specific simulation, but these are statically constructed, or rather they're constructed a single time and reused across the simulations. So that does feel like a split point in the meaning of the two. Somehow I want to make sure that I think that this thing is pretty okay. I just need to be able to do something like machine sim context reset or something like that, right? And so to run multiple instances, we'll just sim init the default, run, and then context reset. And we just gotta plug that in for now. This might be the beginning of a problem that I need to understand better, but that's what we'll start with. So reset just means you make it like it was at the beginning, before you simulated anything, but after you gathered all the constructed information. Dude, oh, you made Clavier? That's so cool. The I saw this morning or just yesterday or something, and it's super cool looking. Um, here, I don't mind. Here, guys, check this out. This thing, look at this. Are you familiar with Devine's Orca program? It seems very like when I saw this morning, I figured this had to be directly inspired by it. It's very cool. I see. Nice. I I I would love to learn it sometime. I've never learned Orca. I haven't played with Clavier, but they look so cool. They're definitely up my alley as um especially as ways of audio programming goes. It's very cool. And as someone, I actually have some ambitions to do a little bit of audio programming along a different bent with this project. If I do turn it into a game, I want to incorporate the special effects of C scripting into the graphical and audio effects of the interface if I go that far, right? And I have some ideas of how I might, like, where there are points to take advantage of this little system I've been building. Um, but I feel like I should play with some procedural music generation programming environments like these, just to see what other ideas there are and what I get my head into the right space to think about that kind of stuff. So I might actually check out Clavier sometime. I was really impressed with it when I saw the demo this morning. So I don't mind passing that along to everybody else. Let's see here. So Alright, it's all just wild hackery today. We will make a mess in the name of having fun for myself to clean up in the future. Because that's the only way I know how to do things. Context arena. Hey, K-Monk, I wish I could. I'm probably the last person in the world who can help with advice on promoting things. I don't feel that I'm an expert at that. I'm probably, you know, any success I have at marketing is just from like sheer volume of time spent putting myself out there and not at all from mastery of the process. But I mean, you've got something on Steam and it looks awesome. So I would just say keep posting it, you know. More than anything else is just like long-term exposure. That's all I've ever been able to do that matters. Okay. So after construction, we do that so that we can have reset work properly. Reset wants to pop the arena position, clear the log stream, and just to be sure, it'll also zero out these, and it will make a new PRNG. Let's see, one at a time here. Log, so these get ignored. PRNG gets reset. PRNG equals, okay, this. We make that from that. Machine arena. So in addition to setting the arena back to its initial position, we want to set the machine frame and params back to 0. The party state stuff doesn't matter because that gets refilled all the time. This gets refilled all the time. That gets allocated ahead of time anyways. We just need to make sure that, I think that gets cleared whenever it needs to be. Script registers are gonna be zeroed out. I don't love managing the state like this because this is where bugs will slip in. I need to figure out how to segment it so that from scratch initialization over and over again of this part can be the only code path that exists rather than an init and a reset, which vary in terms of how you do them, which isn't great. Shermer asks why I'm using so many global variables because they're paranoid about using globals rather than passing. And I think that's fair. I guess, what's an example of a global I'm using? I do use a lot of globals, but like right now, nothing I'm touching is about globals. So I think specific instances matter here. Um, but I guess one thing to point out here is the whole entire idea of C scripting is to use way more globals, but that they are not global variables. They are just global variables used as delivery of information. They are binding of data from they are pre-binding of data. They're a method of turning an expression of code into a particular pattern in the program easily. But they're not quite global variables. And the rest of these, like everything here, this is all context bound. I guess yeah, I don't know. I guess I just want to know which globals you're talking about because the different globals have different justifications. Okay. So, by the way, we're on Rad Debugger now. This is Rad Debugger, everybody. Say hello. We're going to use this most of the time. It works better than... Most of the time, it does stuff that I want to be able to do, like switching between projects and stuff. It still occasionally makes me nervous when weird crashes happen, not in the debugger, but in the program that I don't always like how it handles it. Although, honestly, Remedy has the same issue sometimes. It might just be like a one of those things that's beyond architecture of the local software and more to do with the operating system being goofy or something about exception handling or who knows what. I haven't figured it out. But usually it's pretty great. So tell me, did we initialize regs the first time through? Yeah, we did. That means okay. So that is kind of slow. Slower than the old simulator, which is sad, but it's kind of expected. We're doing 10,000 runs of this whole thing, and I haven't done a whole lot to optimize it, and it uses a slightly more complex, like, virtual dispatch than it used to. I was hoping that it would be faster because it doesn't have to bind things by string names everywhere, but looks like that's not the case. Context decisions. Yeah, these aren't globals. These are all living in RPG context. Right, so decisions here, that's in the context. Arena, that's in the context. Okay, so what I want to do is after each run, I should be able to do something like, um, Let's see here. I guess when I set up one of these, what I want to do is I want to set, in addition to everything else, I'm going to set a tracker on whichever party is the player, essentially. Again, just hacking for fun tonight, today, this afternoon. So I say I want to track that party, and when I'm done, I should be able to look at the track party and answer some questions about it, like how many final member count equals child count. Up here we can get the initial member count. All right. And then I don't really need that. Yeah, that makes sense. One space indentation makes these basically look like they're not inside a scope. Like, oh, they're just all the way to the left. I guess a part of why I don't know like fall for that anymore is because I'm used to the four. Yeah, like four coders highlighting a scope, so I just leave a cursor there and I can see immediately that I'm in a scope, like instinctively. Okay, so final member count. Then what we want to be doing is I essentially want to put that together into a big histogram. So we're going to have and then sim log mode. Now, I have this ASCII library here. But what I actually want to do is something a little different today. The uh, the histogram I have, well, yeah, the histogram I have is good for um, let me think. What is the actual effect of a single histogram supposed to be? Is it supposed to be how many characters survive? Is it supposed to be Usually it's more like how many rounds they can complete was what I used to do. Um, how many rounds they survive to. And how I would count that right now is uh, well, so let me think, let me think. Hmm. um so what I'm thinking through is what is the information I actually want to capture through multiple repetitions. Before I had a way to run a single simulation multiple times, and I would build a histogram out of how far they went on like through repetitions. Right, the same party repeats the same journey over and over again, and we measure how tough it is by how many repetitions they can survive. And then the other version I made was one where the party runs the a single journey once, and we count how many survive, how many party members survive the journey. And that's how we determine how dangerous it was. And these are two different indexes. I can't be doing them both at the same time. They involve different initial states and different values that I query at the end. The hard thing about doing the first one is that I'd at least have to, one more thing I'd have to change, which is I'd have to count how many. Let me think. I'd have to count how many times some kind of state recurred, which is exactly the sort of thing I would want the tile boards for. Um, but I could just program it in a little more manually. What will we do? How is it? So count is 1. The machine frame has a p count of 1. The context has a p count of 2. And that's because the context was just recently being used by... Does this not bring up the... Too bad. This is 4Coder. It's not actually a terminal text editor, but it is extremely minimalist, like a terminal. Let me think. So the big problem here is the context hasn't been renormalized. So this is correct. Coming back from an encounter. And we can look at the RP states. When we go to set the machine state, somehow it's now creating a situation it didn't used to create. Here does the stack pop. Before it runs this, I think it needs to normalize the array, because it's done a pop already, but it hasn't. Yeah. That whole thing is a mess. Like I said, probably what I should be doing is fixing up the madness of the machine state array at this point. Okay, so now it runs just fine. It didn't show me what I expected to see, though. It was a log. We are running in log mode, right? But you're resetting too soon. You're resetting too soon. Let's have it do a reset right before a default init instead of after. How about that? Okay, so there we go. Runs. They go until they die. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. Sometimes doesn't take so long. I want to see the histogram representing things like how many times did the party, how many encounters did the party actually go through, right? And so to get that out, Okay, so it takes however long it takes, but when it's done, we should be able to ask what the encounter counter looks like and stick that right here. Now it's going 10,000 times and it takes a minute. So let me think. I could be pretty close. I'm gonna need to look at the nums again and compare that to the histogramming. The histogram wants float 32 values. And then we can print the histogram. Okay, so I'm gonna do the following changes for the next run. Count each one up that way, and then print the histogram when you're done. And that's gonna look like stats, hist stats f print standard out stats hist f print standard out data hist control params still going. Okay, very slow. That's 10,000 reps with each one being a, potentially unbounded length of time depending on how lucky they get. So there'll be a bunch of short ones, but then some real long ones. And maybe I should just kill this one and shorten the window a little bit until I can, get it a little better. The, let's try 100 reps instead of 10,000. That'll be 100 times less. And then let's look at what we can do here. So integer, yes, this is gonna come up here. His params dot integer equals 1. Histparams.precision equals 1. Histparams.width equals 80. Height equals 40. Let's drop in the ASCII layer to help me out here. Histparams datum. Okay, 100 runs. What do we get? Okay, tons of variability it looks like. Very, very variable. Let's shrink it in so it fits better. And now, if I pick something that doesn't have such a high max, I might be able to have a better time here. Let's replace each small goblin encounter with small goblin party. Let's replace that with something a little more dangerous, like let's give them a full-on goblin party every time. I doubt they can even survive a day. So min 2 encounters, max 4. Okay, let's do small goblin party, but with 2 goblins instead of 1. There we go. So that's nice and controlled. They can survive 4 encounters, they can but die on that one, or they can survive up to 12 encounters. I guess it's not 12. They can get to a maximum of 12 encounters, right? With maximum luck. That's how far they can get. And instead of 100 encounters, let's have them, or 100 simulations, let's have them do 10,000 simulations again. There we go. So if I give them enough chances, they can get farther and farther. I'm not sure if it's possible for them to have a perfect day, which means that there might be a maximum they can ever achieve. They might always be losing a little HP, total. I'd have to look at it. I think they are bound to lose at least 6 HP each day. They can heal at most 4. 5 if you count the protect. So I don't think they can have a perfect day. At most they can prevent 5 damage, but they have minimum 6 incoming, possibly more. So even if you get minimum amount of damage, every time you fight you only take 2 damage, you do 3 encounters per day. And then everybody heals at night. Well, they're getting full heals. Okay. So let's change gears. So that's the histogramming part. We're starting to build up the simulation part where we have histograms that show a little bit about the difficulty curve, the the variability, etc., how the attrition rate against different encounters. So the small goblin party versus the like repeatedly going up against a party with 3 farmers and a wizard right now looks like this, right? Now what I want to see is what if I say, okay, they're only supposed to be getting okay rest, so let's just change the hack to be that they get okay rest. This should make it harder for them because now they're actually going to be maxed out on how many heals they can get, which they weren't before. So it was just a matter of the statistical unlikelihood of getting perfect days still being a factor. But now, I bet you we'll never see it go over 12. That might be like a hard limit. 12 encounters means 4 times they lose a heart. Nah, they can do better than 12, but it's extremely hard to start doing better at this point. To show you what the simulation looks like from the perspective of the log, just to remind you what we just changed, or illuminate what we just changed. They go into this fight. Now it's 2 instead of 1 dude that they're fighting. So they take 2 damage during the fight. And it looks like they have multiple rounds during this fight, right? So they took 2 damage, they'll take a third. One of them hit this protected guy, and the other one also hit him and gave him -1 heart. Then they hit him again for -1 heart. They go forward again. We don't have a protect spell anymore. They fight it out. This time, this guy and this guy take a hit. This guy is still standing. They fight it again. So you can see they already have taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actual hits. Plus they use the protect, so they're down 5. And they travel again. By the end of this day, they're barely hanging on. Everyone's taken at least 1 hit. Most of them are down to 1 heart. And they decide to camp and they rest. And when they wake up, everyone gets +1 heart and their spells are back, right? So there's the help of being able to stop and rest. But you can see it's right down to the wire here. So they have a good chance of getting knocked out. Even from a fresh, full heal, they can lose a character. And once they've lost 1 character, their damage out per round goes down and they fall off quickly. Okay. So that's the histogram mode. Turn off the log. Run this again. Cool. So what do we want to be doing next? I think it could be kind of fun to go and build the real version of the rest system that I was just visiting and saying that I hacked, or at least to make progress on it. What's hard here is figuring out how I want to compute the rest quality. Ultimately, what this comes down to is when you're resting, how much rest you get is going to be some kind of game rule that I have not entirely decided upon yet, but the basic result that I want is that usually you get okay rest when you're camping, and usually you get good rest when you are in a town, like in an inn or something, right? When you're staying in a proper bed in a building, then you get this one. Whereas if you stay outside and camping, you get a little less recovery. And then other things affect you from that baseline. That's kind of the thought process. So a character basically starts off with a default rest quality, and then some modifications to the rest quality should occur, and then the effect should apply, something like that. I don't see an easy way. Okay, here's something I can work on. The time system is very new, but I want to be able to track the number of days that have occurred. That's something we could play with for a bit. Thought I had a reset. Now, what happens is during rest and during journey, there are different ways of advancing time. Here, we advance time by incrementing the hour by 1, but here we advance time until we reach a specific hour. And I want to have, yeah, okay, so I want to basically just do context time hour inc. Like this or something. But the issue I'm worried about here is that I suspect this might set off rules like these might set off other effects. Maybe not this one exactly. It's a little hard to say how this wants to work. Essentially, traveling is the part that takes the time, but I want the time to change after the travel, right? So you do the travel. You can do some activities while you're traveling. Maybe you have an encounter. Right now, it's always the same thing, but really what's supposed to happen is maybe you have an encounter, and then after that's resolved, we finish up with the the consequences of your journey, which is unless you died or ran away from your encounter, you made forward progress on your journey, and time passed. Either way, time passed. And when time passes, I want to allow for interruptions to occur somehow. But if they're encoded right here in one of these rules or in one of these, return handler signature hooks or whatever, then how will we stack those events, right? Well, because they're probably going to want to be machine states. They're kind of like interrupts or something in the machine structure, right? This is doing some work, and then before this handler completes, something else wants to happen, but we can't actually do that. We've been over this with other things. So somehow this is going to actually need to find its way outside of this function. And I think what maybe needs to happen is that these moments here time incrementing needs to be handled somewhere in the loop outside. And then these need to be sending out an idea of what to do with the, like, how to increment the time from the rule. But the main loop is going to have to implement time handling so that it can implement the interrupts and stuff. So we run a rule by going run the preamble, get moves from all the players, their decisions, run all the moves, run the postamble. In theory, this could get split up into multiple stages so that this can, like, something like shuffle and run moves here is actually going to be able to say, like, run a move and then check and see if after that move anything has changed that requires a transition to a new state, and then run a move. Or it might be run all the moves of the highest speed, right? I'm imagining a speed system is going to get worked in here so that when you shuffle and run moves, faster moves come before slower ones, but tied moves come in any order. And so it might be tied moves all happen simultaneously, because I already have simultaneous resolve as part of the concepts built in here anyway, so it might as well. Moves at the same speed resolve simultaneously, let's say, and then possibly some state shifts have been queued up that need to run. And they need to run before any of the other moves occur at that point. They're fully, like, there's sort of an immediate interrupt to the running of the moves. And when we come back, we finish running the moves, and we still are going to run the postamble here. When we run a postamble, that can push something new on. And sometimes when we are done, like when we have finished a machine, it's gotten to an exit state, then what happens is, instead of running a rule, it pops the stack and runs the return handler. And the return handler, as well as the postamble, both want to be able to say, here's how I would like time to be affected. Right, I can increment it by 1 hour, or I can say whatever. But once time is affected, then down here, before we move on to the next state, if there are any interrupts based on time, they would happen first. I think that's the way it would work. Probably what I want to do is have like command Q kind of logic here. But for now, I'll just do this. You run everything, and then you say, okay. So it's sort of like part of the exit state of any rule is the ability to control the time variable in one of these ways. It's actually a command that could be omitted, but it gets handled in the update loop at the end after the post ambles. Looks about the same as before. Same mean, same similar max. Max was 12, now it's 11. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. The mean is almost 6. Almost 6 number, and is the number of encounters. What if I want to see the number of days though? So sim.cnew, instead of counting the number of days, give me the day count. Count the number of days. Let's also give them the option to rest. We'll let the bot brain have the idea, so it'll have to always make a step forward on hour 2 and 3, but on hours 4 and 5 it will consider resting. If it has at least one character with one heart, it will rest. So it'll go slower in order to survive, and then we'll measure out how many days it can survive. It should be able to survive farther now, so it's going to take longer. But I need it to survive a little longer because they were only surviving 1 day before. So there you go. Now it's measuring number of days with the min being 0. It's possible for them to get wiped on day 1. But it's possible for them to completely survive 2 days, and the mean is 2.29 days there, right? You can see that they are sometimes able to survive past 8 days. A total of 8 days. Get to the 9th day. Okay, so the 1x1 histograms are nice. The fact that it's slow as it is a little it's a little disappointing because I'd like to be able to speed things up. I haven't really gone to the optimization phase of this yet, and I guess I'm just disappointed that it didn't automatically pop out faster. I was kind of hoping that the string resolutions on the tiles would be the most expensive thing, but honestly, it's probably stuff like scanning the tiles, which are linked lists as entities. That's gonna, like, switching to tile boards will probably do a lot. It'd probably be smart to go in and do some instrumentation and really profile what's taking the longest. For all I know, it could be some other stupid thing, like the shuffles and stuff might be the slowest part. In which case I might want to look into why that is. Whatever. Okay, so we can see now what it's like to test one journey where the journey is just the same encounter over and over and over again. I would kind of like to see what it's like to have a richer type of journey. So right now, I encode the journey's parameters as just a counter of how many steps need to be taken, and then hard code what an encounter looks like. I want the encounters to definitely not be hard coded, but to be parameterized. I could parameterize them with this route thing. Way back in the day, what I would do is I would have a route, and then I would put in the route to tell it how many, like what encounters to include in the deck. And so it'd be cool to say, like, okay, I want to do this journey here. It involves 6 encounters, and then it's over, but it's these 6 encounters. Can we do that? And I guess the other thing we could do here is now let's add in a survivor count version. Track party child count is our number. It's still an integer. Number of surviving members. Survivor count. And this should just be zeros. There's no way they get to the end alive, so they always die, I assume. Because otherwise some of them would have much higher maxes, right? So they're always getting wiped by this particular journey. But What if the journey was just to encounter 6 of them? 6 of those small goblin parties. It should not take nearly as long, so they should have a chance to complete it a lot of the time and cut the simulation short. And once we do have a visual interface, we'll be able to see the histogram growing over time, and so we won't have to wait for the whole thing to finish. Zero, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the 5 possible outcomes. All of them do occur. Looks like the most common one is for no one to be dead yet after 6 encounters. But on average, it's a 1.3 high standard deviation, so it can be all the way up to 4. High variance on this particular challenge. Sometimes it's terrible, sometimes you're fine. Okay, so I could push towards having the grade comparison matrix mode that I had, which is the other, way to use the RPG simulators to compare multiple combinations of parties and routes. But I don't have. Okay, I think the right thing to do is to change how I'm doing the route. Let's do, instead of this, let's do RPG Proto Drowsy Drive. The idea that we're now going to start doing route IDs here. Here. How do I want to do this? So yeah, I guess what I want to do is go something like, I'll just send down the route ID and I'll have the machine constructor do the rest. Right? And then the machine constructor is this piece, so we grab the RPG proto for the route by doing RPG proto from ID on the params route ID. Um, and so the subcontext needed step count will become that total count, and its encounters will be determined by going subcontext we have a subcontext arena, don't we? They called the machine arena now? Okay. Push an array onto the context machine arena. One proto pointer times total count. And then what we do is we fill those encounters like this. Look at each encounter. So what's happening is I'm creating an array of all the encounters that could happen, and then I am going to shuffle them. So we roll an index between 0 and the total count minus the value we're at. And then we want to do I plus that much. So this will never be less than the index we're on. And it'll never be a 1 here because a total count, if I was equal to total count minus 1, then this could be a 1, but then we end the loop. But if it's less, then we get a big number here, number between 0 and the limit at least, the number of unshuffled elements. We offset it by I to get the index. Why don't we do it like this? If index does not equal 0, and swap these two, and then you increment. That does the shuffle. And then what happens is instead of spawning a random one here, we go party from proto is going to be the context, now the subcontext encounters plus the subcontext step count. We have to get our subcontext manually. That tells us which encounter to spawn. Then we plug the current party plus the spawn party into an encounter. Looks good to me. But each one has a count of 0 for some reason. Okay, so what's going wrong there must be about the parser. Repeats. After we count the number of repeats, we add these literal members. Each literal member still needs to be told that its count is 1. Although it's a little confusing why this wouldn't just be repeats. All right, so I don't know if that's correct because I wasn't running this before, so I don't know if I've changed anything, but it looks totally real. Like, it looks reasonable. Let me actually run the log mode real quick. So, our heroes begin on a journey. They take the first hour of the travel to cast Protect on this guy, and then when the fight begins, they've got 2 goblins to fight. They wipe out one of them, must focus fire at him hard, while one of them gets hit, and the one that was protected loses its protection. And then in another round, they'll focus fire this guy, and he takes another hit. And they keep traveling. Another encounter. They wipe out the other guys, and they've all taken 1 hit. Hour 4, they're still all in good enough condition to keep traveling according to the bot brain. Even though it would be a perfect time to stop and sleep, they want to make good time. They decide to take another step forward, and this time, instead of encountering 2 goblins, it's a goblin and a sleeping spores mushroom. Let's see what happens. They well, they wiped the other party out, but not before taking another hit here, and this guy got put to sleep. Now they go into the journey mode, and this guy's asleep from the end of this, so he's still asleep here. I think I need to change the rules on sleep and move counters a little bit, because I would like it if, in this case, once the guy got woke up, he was then able to make moves. The fact that he was asleep at the beginning here, that in combat, the idea is that if you're asleep, then at the beginning of the round, then you forfeit a turn. I don't know if that makes sense during solo things, like, they're setting up camp. One of the guys was asleep at the end of the last fight, so you wake him up and say, hey, we're going to set up camp here. He should be able to just do moves now, right? So there's something about the flow of moves and when you can use them that I don't like right at this moment. But anyways, they go into rest mode. Everyone heals 1 HP. They get the Protect spell back, and the journey continues. In this one, they fight another Sleep Spores guy. He's protected. Who takes the hit? He takes the... No, who takes the hit? I guess he takes the hit. He gets put to sleep. They go on the journey. Hey, Maria. How's it going? Another thought that's just occurring to me is maybe what I'm missing here is that after an encounter is done, anyone who could be woken up should just automatically be woken up. Like there should be sort of an end of encounter event that clears out certain things like temporary sleep. Looks like they went to rest at the 4th hour of the day there, so they only took 2 steps before things got desperate and they decided to blow the roll. Final encounter of the journey is these two goblins, and they survive. They come out the other side intact. So there we go. That's what one example looks like. It took them 3 days. Now let's look at stuff like, okay, we want a histogram, but I don't want to see the survivor count. How many days does it usually take? I don't think it can take less than 2 days. Of course, that means that the result would be 1 because the day counter starts at 0. So the second day is day 1, and I think that that's the minimum. But I could see it taking 3 or 4 days. Looks like 3. Usually it's 3, actually. Look at that. That's the part of the idea here is now I can start to simulate and then grab information like, okay, I should count on this taking about 2 days to complete. How's today been for me? It's been all right. I've kind of just been playing around and having fun. The first stream of the day we did some C scripting iteration, and now I'm just playing with the features of the RPG simulator, setting up the histogramming and stuff with the new system. Although I am feeling a little gassed. It's been 2 hours of streaming, so it might be about time for me to wrap up too. I'm feeling the sense in my face that I don't have the total concentration for more of this, and it's actually been like a good amount of stuff that's gotten done. All of this new histogramming stuff. I've organized how I initialize the encounters a little bit. All right, cool. All right, I think that'll be it for me today. With that, thanks for coming to hang out, and I will see you all next week when like I said, I think we might start to play with maybe on Monday or at least sometime before too late into the week. I'd like to start playing with putting some C scripting stuff into the asset viewer so that I can manipulate settings. And before that, I'll try to get this back into correct shape so that whatever's going on with the colors will be fixed. This doesn't look quite right. Sure what happened. Anyway, I will be back next week. See y'all later. Bye.